The second one, we haven't heard any updates on that. Anything curious from Josh Doan this afternoon, Joe?
Well, it was. I've had a lot of moments through my career, which is very weird to say in the first place, but I've had a lot of moments in my career where you talk to like the sons of players that you watched. This might be the first time where we're in an interview with the son of a player that like I've written stories about and covered and talked to numerous times. And the first thing, he gets asked, of course, about his father, Shane Doan, longtime Coyotes, face of the Coyotes, guy.
Right.
And he goes, yeah, my dad's a big nerd about hockey. He's up on all the stats. And, I'm next in line to ask a question. And I had like that deja vu moment of, I remember having this exact conversation with Shane here in Buffalo a few years ago, where Shane was saying the exact same things about Josh and about what a nerd he is, big on fantasy hockey, all this stuff. I'm like,
right.
And I'm just sitting there and like, if people had like the whole panel of everybody that's on this Zoom call there, they would have seen me just like laughing to myself and also dying inside at hearing this because holy cow, man. Like it's stunning, but, great guy. Michael Kessler couldn't have said enough nice things about him. Great for the room, the whole thing. So, there's reasons to feel upbeat after hearing from these guys. If you're a fan, I mean, I'm not a fan. I'm in this for the stories, but like you listen to these guys talk and they're excited. Like they want to, the line's gotten tired, but they want to be here. You want to be part of the solution, the whole thing. So like it's encouraging. It's good. And I think they're both good players. It's just, it's the trade. I think there just needed to be more.
Right. Yeah, they gave up the best player in the deal. Buffalo did. Joe, how much do you know about what unraveled for Peterka here? Like, why did we end up in a place where, at least the way I'm perceiving it, is that it's being widely said he didn't want to be here. Is there any chance that the Sabres thought we need to change our mix? He's an RFA. We got a decision to make about committing long term, and maybe there are things there definitely are things to not like about his game. Still, though, he is the best player in the trade. What do you know about what happened with Peterka?
Well, this is such a small place that you hear things all the time, and there's all kinds of stuff that you hear about. But the one thing that always stuck with me about JJ was that he was a big favorite of everybody in the organization. Top down, ownership down, like they loved him, and they loved the talent. It was a massive pride point for Kevin Adams, drafting him in the second round, and even at the time when they drafted him, it was like hey, these guys. This is a great pick. I think they got a guy, and and it was one of those picks that when it was made, everybody's like, "Hey, I think they got a winner here. Like this is really good for Buffalo," and it was. It's a great pick, and it's a moment where everybody, scouting, Kevin Adams, everybody can be like, "Yeah, we nailed it. We got the right guy. We made the right pick. We got this down." And those are guys you don't want to let go of. Those are guys that obviously it's a pride point. So you're just like, hey, it's the guy we scouted, we found, we drafted him. Let's keep him. And something changed. Whether it's the lack of success, whether it's his playing, how dealing with how hard Lindy can be on guys or being asked to defend a little bit better, all these kinds of things where, it kind of takes away the fun of playing hockey, which, I guess that's a maturity thing at that point. But when those things kind of pile up and, a guy reaches this point of his career where it's, hey, it's time to sign a long-term deal that, RFAs are starting to understand that they've got a little bit more leverage than in the past guys used to think they have. And this was a point for JJ to kind of draw a line and say, hey, listen, this ain't working here for me. Like this might be time to go. And I don't think Buffalo wanted to let him go. I don't think that's a guy they had any designs on trading. But when push comes to shove, if a guy's just, the magic words are I don't want to be here anymore, then so be it. But But it's not a trade that Buffalo makes lightly, and I know the return doesn't get anybody overly excited. I mean, listen, Kessler is going to be really good. He's going to be a very good player for them. He's going to help outpower the whole thing. But when you're thinking, and the thing breaks late last night, and you start thinking like, oh, maybe they're getting the number 4 pick. Maybe there's something else going on here. Maybe your imagination starts to run wild, and then it's a couple of guys for a guy, and you're like, wait a minute, this is not what we were expecting. So I don't know if it's a case where everybody gets a little bit too excited about what's happening, and then the reality of everything kind of lets it down. But like when you write it all down on paper, it just does not look. The look does not look good for Buffalo, right. Even though it might work in the end. It's kind of like the Savoy-McLeod deal last year, where Adams got crushed for it, and I think a lot of us knew it made sense, but the wider picture was just like, boy, that's an ugly one. That'll look bad in years, but so far so good.
With Joe Yerdon, I mean, it's Utah. Maybe if Bulldog only watched 2 games of theirs, a lot of us didn't see any. And so they're not going to be household names. But that also means that, like, it's not a team where you're winning a lot. It's not Edmonton, for example, where trading these players to the Sabres might be really tough on the players. I can believe it. This could always be true, but I could believe it if these guys on Utah can find some, positives in coming here.
Yeah, and for Michael Kesselring, he made it very clear he's an East Coast guy, and he's played out west his whole career. He used to be in the Oilers system, played in Bakersfield, California, in the AHL. Then he ends up in Arizona. He's playing in Tucson. He's playing in Tempe, and then you're in Salt Lake City, and it's a long way from home. That's not getting to see the family a lot, and he's not making a ton of money, so it's spending a lot of money to get the folks out there and get them tickets and whatever. But it's exciting for them because now it's like, oh, hey, cool, family can come and watch way more often. We're going to go to Boston like twice a year because he grew up, he's a Boston area guy. He played at Northeastern with Devin Levi, so it's exciting for him and for Josh Doan. I mean, he's the Western guy, played at Arizona State, grew up around the Coyotes locker room his whole life, and gets drafted by them. The whole, the very honestly cool sweetheart story. But the old man's been working for the Leafs now for the last couple of years, and we know how close Toronto is, so that's kind of a nice thing. But but it's a situation that offers him a huge opportunity as well, and that's. It comes down to playing time and opportunity and stuff like that. So that's what gets guys excited. I think leaving Utah now is maybe a little tough because Utah was cooking last year. They've got something good going there, and them trading for Peterka makes a ton of sense. I totally get it. And obviously the view on Buffalo right now is really down. So it would be easy to be really, upset. I don't know. Disappointed, whatever. But for these guys, like this is a chance to show out, and this is a chance to play big minutes. And listen, this is stuff we used to say about the Bills in the past. But if you can get the Sabres to the playoffs after all this, you're a legend. Never mind winning a cup right now; it's just get to the playoffs.
Right.
The one thing that Marc-Andre Gragnani got wrong was the timing. They'd been to the playoffs. If he'd come along 15 years later, he could have been a hero.
Joe, I certainly, like anyone, can understand being underwhelmed on paper with what the return looks like. And faith is in short supply. The benefit of the doubt barely exists, if it exists at all, when it comes to this management team with the Sabres. But if there is another move coming to replace some or all or even add to what Peterka was offering you offensively, I like the roles that are set here for these players. They've been looking for a partner for Power since he got here. It's patently absurd, in my opinion, that it's taken 3 seasons, but here we are. That I'm optimistic about that. And I think Doan is the kind of player that the league is sort of trending toward, a bigger 200-foot player and, forecheck and all that. The Sabres are not long in that type of guy. and I don't know where his upside ends up. I know he's got an above-average shot, which is helpful. So I like where they slot in, provided they spend the money they're saving on not paying Peterka, which again is saying a lot. So you got to really twist yourself up a bit. But I assume there's a Byron trade coming, and that in some way, shape, or form he contributes to them finding their way to the top 6 forward that they've needed for. Well, I mean, they definitely needed another one last year, and they never got it. But I think provided there's another move, I like this trade as it stands sitting here today, as long as they supplement.
Yeah, I had to write the winners and losers piece very early this morning for Bleacher Report on the trade, and it's almost like you want to give an incomplete grade for the Sabres because you're like, well, this is one trade. There's at least one more coming, assuming. I think we've been assuming since, pretty much since the season ended, maybe even before the trade deadline, that Bo Byron probably going somewhere else, just because the fit's not quite right, and the money is going to be an issue because do you pay 3 defensemen a ton of money? Like it's the whole thing, but the pressure's on now. You can't not trade Bo, even though keeping him's fine, I guess. But you can't, if you're thinking you're trading him, you got to cash in. You have to get that top 6 forward. There is no escape from that now. It has to be done. And now there's kind of an artificial bar set because Michael Russo at The Athletic wrote that the Wild offered Marco Rossi for Peterka, and the Sabres were very adamant about getting a right-hand shot defenseman, which you can get mad about it, but they needed it. It's just, maybe that's not the guy you had in mind, but getting laser focused on that, maybe, I don't know, whatever. If it turns out that Byron lands him a guy that nobody has even at the front of their mind for a trade, that turns out to be okay, I get it now kind of deal. Great. That's perfect. And then the I'm sorry's can come out and be written, and I'll be the first guy up front to be like, hey, my bad. Nope, that's a win. But you have to win. But you gotta
do it. Right.
You can't be a guy who, where you're like, I don't know, second, third liner, maybe, I don't know, like a tweener. It can't be that. Or unless it's a guy that's got the super high upside who just got buried on a really good team, then all right, fine. But we're putting too many qualifiers out there as it is when there's already 1,000 of them in place in case they don't add a top 6 forward.
On that Marco Rossi point, Michael Russo is a known name. He's been around a long time. Mm-hmm. But if he's reporting a specific offer involving the name of a player, that guy's getting moved.
Oh yeah,
they're not leaking. They're not answering his call with this is the player we offered Buffalo, unless he's not coming back.
No, here's an 8-year contract.
Right? Yeah, no, right.
That probably doesn't work.
He's not coming back.
Right.
So maybe he'll be moved somewhere, I would think. And I don't know. Do the Sabres have to be not in the conversation when it comes to him because of whatever Byron would represent to Minnesota? I haven't thought that through, but I feel like he'll probably get traded.
I think if it was maybe, obviously the timelines don't work out, but if this was before they drafted Zeev Buium and found their soon-to-be number 1 puck-moving defenseman, and considering they've already got Brock Faber on the right side, then maybe you could say, hey, Bo Byron, hey, I bought it. You guys want to get rid of Rossi. You're not happy with him. We'll take him. But I think the role that Bo is looking for probably isn't there for him in Minnesota. And I think Rossi would drive some of the fan base crazy because he's not a huge guy. He's strong. He's strong as an ox, but he's not big. But, boy, he can score. He can skate, the whole thing. It's why myself included, we're like, boy, they got to run to the podium and draft this guy when they drafted Quinn. And I was like, oh, whoops. Okay, well, all right, that's fine. That's a good pick still, but,
yeah.
Rossi was the other guy in that team that was like, man, he's incredible. And they drafted the other guy from that junior team. But that's not to say that Buffalo can't be in that discussion, but I think that trade would be a lot different, and I don't know, maybe the fit isn't right, you know?
I feel without just because he's small, painting with too broad a brush. But I said earlier, I feel like Rossi is repetitive of what they already have in their system. I mean, he's an NHL player already with 60 points last year, I recognize. But if you want to make your team over to be bigger and harder to play against, I don't really think Marco Rossi in your top 6 is getting that done. And I also think he might be a little bit, I don't know, he wants to go somewhere reportedly where he can be a number 1 center. And I don't know if that's, I mean, he might be a really nice number 2, but I don't know about number 1 center for him myself. So I didn't mind that they passed on that. But again, it's with the caveat that the other move happens. Because if it doesn't, then it's going to look really bad that they didn't jump at a guy like him, I think.
Yeah, and, the number 1 center thing is so interesting because of, Tage had so much success in the wing last year, and you're like, oh, well, is he going to stay there? And it sure seems like that's going to be the case. And, Kulik up the middle, you're like, okay, well, he's really good. Is he a number 1 center? I think because a lot of us were assuming that he was going to be a winger, given his shot and, the way that he played the game. But, now he's seems to be pretty set in as a center, and that's what he's going to be, which, that's fine. He didn't seem like a fish out of water at all last season. So, that's great. But
don't forget Josh Norris, Joe.
Yeah, all apologies to Josh Norris. I keep forgetting they've got him, but the caveat there, if he's healthy, he's a really great player, and he's got to stay healthy. He's got to, stop walking under ladders or stop crossing, having black cats cross his path, and just find some good luck there. But yeah, it's. I remember asking Adams at the end of the season if, how he felt about the center position. Does he feel like that's if that's an area that's got to address? And he ran down the list of the guys, Kulik, Norris, the whole litany of guys, McLeod, Krebs, everybody. He's like, I think we're pretty deep at center. He's like, I like our group. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's good, but do you have a number 1? And, I think that's the fair question. Because once Tage moves off center and he's not playing center anymore, you don't have a number 1 anymore.
I feel like if a guy who's sort of mid says he wants to be a number 1 center, he wants to go to a bad team. It's probably what he's looking at. He's probably not looking at Edmonton or Toronto, for instance.
Maybe you would have loved it here, Rossi.
Maybe he would have been perfect. Maybe it'll still happen.
Yeah.
Joe Yerdon, Bleacher Report. Joe, thanks for the time.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.